Well, boys, the hierarchy of power has officially changed within the DCEU.
Things will never be the same because the hierarchy of power in the DC universe is about to change.
All right, I just saw Black Adam. We're back in my car. The car. It's all around me. And yeah, the Black Adam's been a movie that's been in the works for, I think, I'm not even joking, for the past 15 years. I think The Rock has been trying to get this movie made. I'm not even joking. Like 15 years he's been on this project. And it's gone through director, different writers, different stories, different owners of Warner Brothers. Like it's been this thing that's been constantly switched hands, but The Rock has been part of it since day one. And then they finally got rolling on it. And then there were even more delays, with COVID, things got weird. And then, yeah, the movie just kept getting delayed, but it finally came out. Finally saw Black Adam. And I have some thoughts. Black Adam is a movie about a character called Black Adam, who is a guy from thousands of years ago in a fictional country called Kahndaq, I think is what it's called. And he's gifted the powers, the wizard powers, the same as Shazam, who we saw in the movie Shazam. But this dude's from thousands of years ago. In this movie, he's brought back to life. Blah, blah, blah. He's an anti-hero. He's not really a good guy, but he's not totally a bad guy. He's an anti-hero. This movie, I don't think is very good. I don't think I liked it very much. But before I get into why I didn't like it, let me just give some reasons and some things that I did like about this movie. First and foremost, I really like The Rock as Black Adam. I think The Rock is doing something different than what he normally does in movies. Normally, he's the funny guy that we see in like the Fast and Furious movies, or in Jumanji, or whatever he's in with Kevin Hart. So he's a different character than that in this, but still a bit comedic or whatever. I really like the way he flew around in this movie. He flies differently than you think of like a Superman flying, where like Superman sort of does the one arm out flying straight thing. Black Adam is always upright. He's flying around upright, and he's just zooming around real quick and punching things. Sometimes it's actually kind of comical, the way it looks. But it's cool. It's interesting. It's a different take. I really liked the Justice Society, who's a big part of this movie, which includes like Hawkman. I was always such a huge fan of Hawkman in the comic books, and I loved Hawkwoman in the Justice League animated series. So really cool to see him in this movie. I also really liked Pierce Brosnan as Dr. Fate. Although I will say, Dr. Fate, Doctor Strange, they're kind of the same sort of character. In the comic books, Dr. Fate was created before Doctor Strange, but in the movies, Doctor Strange came first. And some of the visuals are very, very similar to Doctor Strange. That being said, I still really liked him as Dr. Fate. So those are some things that I enjoyed about the movie. Things I didn't like about the movie. At times, this movie is absolutely hideous. I don't want to shit on, the artists that worked on this movie, the people who did the CG, the animators and stuff like that. But this movie is pretty atrociously ugly at parts. There are some moments where it looks pretty cool and nice, but man, sometimes it just looks really bad. The music choice in this movie is absolutely atrocious for the most part. There's some okay music here or there, but like the use of like the butt rocky guitar chugs, and yeah, it's terrible. I hated the music in this movie. Really took me out of the movie at parts. The use of slow-mo. Oh, I'm just so over it in DC movies. The slow-mo with the electricity and just like we've seen it a million times, and I am just so sick of seeing it in DC movies. So sick of seeing it in DC movies. And let me just say this. I so badly want a DC extended universe. I want it. I want it badly. I love DC Comics. I still buy DC Comics to this day. And I so badly want a DC extended universe within the movies. They just haven't done it. They just haven't done it yet. Which, I mean, you look at the movies, they have actually made quite a few DCEU movies, but man, only a handful of them are really like good, and this is not one of them. That being said, I do think you could piggyback off of this movie and make something cool with the characters that are in this movie, and just kind of pretend like this movie never happened, but use the characters and events of this movie in the future. Like don't completely cut this movie. Don't pull a Star Wars Episode 9 where you just pretend Episode 8 didn't happen, and then it's nonsensical in Episode 9. Use the events of this movie to continue on your story in the future. And I think there is enough there with this movie to continue on. I don't want to spoil it. We'll come back to that. Put a pin in that. We'll put a pin in that. We'll talk about that at the end, okay? I'll say spoilers when we get to that. I'm going to put a pin in that. I don't want to spoil, okay? There are some characters at the beginning of this movie that I did not give a shit about, okay? They came in. I didn't know who these characters were. They were sort of our self-insert characters, and they were totally unnecessary characters. People die, like their friends die in front of them, and they're making jokes. They're making jokes about it. And let me just say, any sort of levity and humor that is used in this movie is terrible. Nothing landed for me. Yeah, and these human characters in this movie, I didn't care about any of them. They didn't give them enough time to really build it all. There's a kid in this movie, and I don't want to shit on this kid because he's a kid, and he's a kid actor. It's not his fault. It's the writing, really. But he's awful. It's terrible. Just dreadful stuff. Just really, really fucking bad. But I will say I enjoy the fact that Black Adam was an anti-hero all the way through this movie. He's killing people. It's pretty gruesome at times too. We see people like hit the floor pretty hard. Like it's pretty intense. We see people get split in half. Yeah, so I enjoy that. But I will say the villain at the end of this movie, completely forgettable, and something we've seen in these comic book movies time and time again, where it's just nonsensical villain who wants power for some reason, using some sort of weird MacGuffin that turns him into like a devil or whatever. And it's just so boring. I don't care about it. They could have made this character interesting, but because he was connected to the human self-inserts, but they didn't even make an effort to make us care about him as a villain at all. But overall, yeah, didn't love the movie, but there were things I liked about it. I liked the Justice Society having to team up with Black Adam and all that stuff, but like some of the dialogue is not good. I don't know who the main character of this movie is. I know it's called Black Adam, but I don't think he's the main character. I don't think the human self-insert is the main character. And I don't think Hawkman's the main character. There is like no main character of this movie. It's a jumbled mess, really. It's really a jumbled mess. The writing in this movie is so bad that literally it ends with, well, if we don't call you Teth Adam, because that's so old-fashioned, what do we call you? And then we get the Black Adam end credit scene. Like, oh my God. All right, we're going to get into some spoilers territory. So if you really care about that with this movie, go ahead and leave now. I appreciate you checking it out. go see the movie, press like, maybe you can come back and watch the end of this. Make sure you hit that subscribe as well. Really appreciate it. I think the most hype moment of this movie was seeing Harcourt. I mean, I love Harcourt, from Suicide Squad and from Peacemaker. That was fun little moment. We see her for 2 seconds. It's like a fun little wink and nod for the fans out there. I love Peacemaker, so I think it's been the highlight of the DCEU for sure. So that was cool. And then let's talk about the post-credit scene, okay? Post-credit scene is Henry Cavill back as Superman. He's back. And I gotta say, I liked the end credit scene. It got me pretty hyped. It was cool to see him back. The suit seems brighter. I love that. It played the John Williams theme underneath it. Dun, 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 dun. That was sick. Loved that. And it makes me question, so like Black Adam, the movie, was made under the previous leadership, right? Most of it. Like it had to have been because the new leadership really just took over recently. And I know there's a lot of hate going on for the current leadership, for killing animation and, they're trying to fuse Discovery and HBO. That's a whole other can of worms. And I agree. They seem to be making a lot of bad moves. But I do wonder if this movie was made under the previous leadership and the new leadership isn't a huge fan of it, but they decided to add this end credit scene in as like a, hey, we're going in a different direction. We're bringing back Henry Cavill and we're going to, actually start to take this seriously, because that moment was really cool. And I hope that's the case. And I am hopeful for the DCEU. But I don't know. I'm not too hopeful because things are seemingly falling apart over at Warner Brothers. So we'll see. But yeah, that moment was cool. I loved seeing the suit that was brighter, and I hope we get to see The Rock and Superman fight. And last but not least, it's gotta be said, Viola Davis as Amanda Waller is an absolute treasure. She's in this movie for about 10 seconds, but I love seeing it. So that's sort of my review for Black Adam. I'd give it a 4 out of 10. 4 out of 10 is probably what I'd give it. Totally watchable. If you love DC, go ahead and see it. If you don't, I don't think it's worth your time. But yeah, I am still hopeful for the DCEU. Here's hoping they can turn it around.